Foundations of biblical theology describe God as an omniscient being. He is outside of time, knows the end from the beginning, and is incapable of forgetfulness. Yet, at the absolute climax of major biblical catastrophes, the text often pauses for a jarring statement: God remembered. To someone like Noah, drifting in a dark ark for months, or the millions of Hebrews enslaved in Egypt, it might have felt as though God had become distracted or simply abandoned the world. Resolving this contradiction involves shifting focus from modern psychology toward the specific architectural design of the ancient text. In this literary context, God remembered is a deliberate narrative hinge designed to signal a sudden physical turning point in the story. The flood narrative serves as the template for how this works. The story begins with a descent. Human violence causes the world to sink back into cosmic chaos and decreation. This diagram reveals how the author structured the account with perfect symmetry. The left descending side tracks the collapse into violence and floodwaters, while the right ascending side mirrors it with receding waters and new life. At the base of this structure sits Genesis 8:1, "But God remembered Noah." This is the pivotal moment that anchors the entire narrative design. This remembrance triggers the physical reversal of the crisis. The wind blows, the waters recede, and the upward trajectory toward a new creation begins. Within this pattern, remembering is an action. It describes God stepping into the chaos to execute a rescue he had already promised. When we see this phrase, the author shows that God is actively delivering on his word, rather than recalling a fact he had lost. Once we recognize the symmetry, we can find the same framework appearing throughout the rest of the Hebrew Bible. In the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, brutal injustice leads to a terrifying decreation by fire. Then the narrative shifts. God remembered Abraham. This statement serves as the trigger for Abraham's nephew, Lot, to escape the fire and find safety on a mountain. The Exodus narrative operates on a much larger scale, following 400 years of slavery and the systemic murder of infants. The turning point arrives when the text says, God remembered his covenant. This is the engine that unleashes the plagues and drives the rescue through the Red Sea. The authors even linked these stories with a specific linguistic cue. The basket used to save baby Moses uses the exact same Hebrew word, teba, as Noah's vessel. The rhythm remains consistent: a tipping point of evil, a painful decreation, and the remembering pivot that leads to active rescue. This repeating structure signaled to ancient readers that God's character is reliable, that he consistently transforms historical chaos into structured recovery. The New Testament authors adopted this same literary template to introduce the arrival of Jesus. Luke's gospel begins by introducing a priest named Zechariah, a name that literally means God remembered, and records Mary praising God specifically for remembering his mercy. At Jesus' baptism, the imagery points directly back to Noah. As he rises from the water, the descending dove signals a new creation. In this framework, Jesus is presented as the act of God remembering, the hinge that shifts the narrative of humanity from death toward life. In a world still marked by violence and injustice, it is easy to look at the surrounding chaos and ask, how long? But this biblical pattern suggests God does not abandon his creation when it falls into disorder. Instead, he remains involved, waiting to move the story from decreation back toward life. Recognizing this pattern invites us to trust that the turning point is coming and to join that work ourselves, becoming people who step into the chaos to partner with God in restoring and blessing.